Greetings, everybody. It is that time again, 4 p.m. Pacific on a weekday, and that means it's time for another episode of IGN News Live / News Games and More, whatever you want to call it. I'm Michael Swaim, and I am here with Ryan McCaffrey, David Griffin, and Casey DeFreitas. Welcome all. Thanks for being here, everyone.
Hello.
Howdy. First and foremost, I wanted to ask, of course, yesterday was the big Sony State of Play showcase, which then sort of dovetailed immediately into pre-orders for the PS5 going live. Am I the only one with a pre-order story? What was everyone's pre-order status? Let's go around. Ryan, putting you on the spot first, my man.
Oh,
Any
sure,
interest?
Well, Walmart just cowboyed up and willingly jumped the gun. I don't know if anybody saw their tweet. They literally tweeted, "Why wait till tomorrow? You want it now!" And they just put them up, and then it was just madness after that as other retailers scrambled to do the same so that they wouldn't get left behind. Although I don't really understand why Walmart did that, because everybody was going to sell out of their initial allotment anyway. But anyway, so yeah, I tried to get through there, no luck, but thankfully, I was able to get through on Target, so that worked out just fine. And I was intending to get the digital, but apparently now the dust has settled a little bit. Virtually no digitals were even offered for pre-order, which a little bit of a, I don't know if it's. Well, I guess I don't have the full story, but it seems a little gross by Sony to have announced the $399 version and then seemingly not had any of them for sale, because I was actually interested in that version. But at the end of the day, I thought, you know what, fine. I'll just. So I guess I succumbed to their madness by just taking the $499 version. But in any case, yeah, that was my afternoon yesterday.
Anecdotally, I will agree that the digital seemed much harder to come by. I ended up nabbing the standard edition at Target. I had intended to go digital. So yeah, we'll definitely dive more into that. In case you missed it, it's $499.99 for the standard edition with the disc and $399.99 for the digital. David, what was your PS5 pre-order experience, if any?
I walked out empty-handed. I've had some really bad luck with the pre-orders. I was talking to Nick Lamone, our producer here today, and I was looking at the 380 graphics cards that came out, the new RTX, the NVIDIA cards, and those were all out. And then last night with the PlayStation PS5, those were all out. I actually would like a disc version. I think I'm holding on to the past with the physical copies. I do have a few 4K Blu-rays laying around here somewhere that I haven't watched in probably 3 years, but maybe that one day that I'm going to pull out 300 Rise of the Empire in 4K and just bask in all the visual glory. Maybe I'll do that. But no, I really would like to have a PS5. I'd love to play the new Miles Morales game on PS5, but no luck for me. I'm gonna have to wait.
As of this morning, at least according to our metrics on the IGN site, 30% of users had pre-ordered. Deals users, and 30% were still seeking pre-orders, so it's still going on as we speak. Casey, what's your status? PS5 status?
I have stories. So for those of you who watch News Games and More every day, I was here yesterday.
That's right.
Also trying to get a PS5 pre-order while on the show. I hope that was entertaining for everyone, seeing me, Mark, Max, and everyone scrambling to get a PS5 pre-order while on the show. I did successfully get one through Walmart. I was desperately trying to get one through Best Buy locally because I prefer to pick up my consoles in person on the day of. It just seems a lot more reliable to me to get it, to physically go in a store and get it than to rely on shipping. But I also was able to get one for Target for someone else at IGN. And then while streaming on my personal stream on Twitch at night, someone in my stream posted the Amazon link for PlayStation, and that's the one I posted in Slack, and we were able to get some Amazon pre-orders as well. So I got a couple people covered for IGN, so at least there's that, but I never got through to Best Buy. Best Buy, I probably clicked on those links, I don't know, 600, 1,000 times. I had one on my phone and one on my computer going, and I was pressing both buttons at the same time, and it just wasn't working.
It's like trying to get concert tickets.
Yeah.
Gamers helping gamers. That the 3080 went in a matter of a minute or something, right? I think we'll get into
it was
all this.
2 minutes. 2 minutes gone.
A very interesting narrative picture, I think. And it bears directly on our first story, which is that Sony says it will ultimately have more PS5 consoles available at launch than they had PS4s. Specifically, Sony CEO Jim Ryan said, quote, "For quite some time in the early part of COVID, that picture was far from clear. Just as a supply, things were unclear. Would there be any market? Would anyone be allowed to go outside? Would any shops be open? This has been a year like no other, but all that just reinforced our resolve, and the path we determined at the start of the year was absolutely the right one." This comes in the wake of an IGN story that was not misreported. It came from a valid source, where Sony had said they were cutting 4 million units, which they later denied. So now we're getting this story of sort of, I think the narrative is, don't worry about it, there will be a largesse, just after I, for one, was not necessarily intending to pre-order, and I did get caught up in like the madness and sort of the consumeristic like celebration
FOMO.
of, we're doing it, you guys, it's happening. Let us trample down the doors and riot and fight over the PS5s because it's something to do. And I just got to ask, is it purely a marketing ploy? How much credit do we give Sony because it is a crazy difficult year? And how much, as Ryan alluded to, is it kind of gross? Because I also think it's kind of gross to some degree. And yet, certainly, I will want everyone to get a PS5 if they want one, and I want mine, and I'm very happy and excited to play on it. And this is far from like the grossest thing a company's ever done, but it does seem a little fabricated, right? Am I crazy?
I don't know who to blame. I don't know whether to blame Sony or Walmart for the surprise this is available for pre-order, because it seems like it was Walmart. Like Walmart went live, and then all the other retailers felt like they had to follow suit. I don't know. I want to know, is Sony angry at Walmart? That's my biggest question right now.
I was talking about that. I forget who I was talking to about that yesterday, but they might be. But the reality is, and Walmart knew this, which is why they put that cavalier tweet up saying, "F it, we're going for it." They're Walmart. They're one of the largest retailers in the country, in North America. There will be no repercussion from Sony to Walmart. Zero. So they knew they could get away with it, because it's not like, is Sony really gonna, when Walmart is such a huge retailer and you've got the holiday shopping season coming up, is Walmart really gonna, or is Sony really gonna say to Walmart, well, we're gonna cut your next shipment in half? No, they're not gonna do that, because Sony knows that Walmart sells them consoles. So yeah, it may or may not ultimately be Walmart's fault. It seems like it, but there's going to be zero penalty for Walmart, which is kind of a shame, because I mean, I've seen a discussion about this on my feeds today. Is some people are upset that, and I think we might have some posts in the comments about this too. Some people are upset that it didn't happen as scheduled, which was supposed to be today, and other people think, well, it worked out better because would bots have just gotten them all today? So I don't think there's a 100% correct way to have gone. It's just who's gonna piss off which way will piss off the fewest amount of people.
Right, that's a very important point, and a valid, I think, vantage is that theoretically, again, Sony promised that we wouldn't be surprised, and of course we were to some degree, but so were they. And yet, if it came out precisely when they said it would, we would stand even less of a chance of getting them. But at the end of the day, I wonder if the whole event wasn't just sort of a let's all get hyped sort of moment in time. And in the end, there will be plenty of PS5s. I'm not sure. Obviously, I don't know. But
Yeah.
David, any thoughts on the subject?
Yeah, it's funny. I was going to say there's also something that I think is brilliant that has happened because of all this. I mean, the hype is already there anyway, but the fact that they just dropped this ahead of time, to pre-order. I mean, I got caught up in the hype, and I honestly didn't even know if I needed a PS, because I cover entertainment, mostly TV, mostly streaming, so I don't need to be, available to necessarily review the PlayStation 5 for IGN. So before I even checked, the bank account, I have a wedding coming up, a honeymoon, I have all these things I'm planning for. I was just kind of like, oh, everybody's ordering one. Like I went on Amazon and I was looking, I'm like, wait. Should I order this? I didn't check in with my fiance, Michelle, the finances, that whole thing. And also to go off that, with the 380 coming out today, again, I was talking to Nick before, I checked the prices on that. And of course, if it was available, but again, the hype was so palpable, and I wanted to be a part of it. I saw everybody was ordering one in our Slack channel. I'm like, oh, I need to get one too. And
when everyone you know is like,
Yeah.
guys, I found it. It's live right now here.
Right.
You're like, it seems like I need this, right?
I was checking, but as of yesterday, I wasn't necessarily planning on buying one and having it in my hands day one. But yesterday made me want to grab one immediately. I think it's a good thing maybe that I didn't get it right away, because now I can take a second to reorient myself and think about life. But I mean, there's something to say about the fear of missing out. Like when everybody's getting something and is going to be a part of this big release. I mean, I want to be a part of it too. I couldn't help it.
I have a story like that with where I came out happy in the end with the Wii U, which is a console that I'm like, I love Nintendo. I was just on NBC yesterday. I love my Switch. But the Wii U, I never had any regret of not owning. Like, yes, there were good games for it. But when it was first coming out, a bunch of IGN people were like, okay, I got one. I found one. I'm in line. I'm going to get one. And I was like, man, maybe I should just get one. Maybe this, everybody's hyped up. And then I didn't end up doing it. And then I was happy that I saved that, whatever it was, $300 bucks.
Well,
so
what we're saying
David,
is IGN.
It's good that you've got time to think about it now.
We peer pressure everyone.
Of course, we also got a bunch of the launch lineup at the showcase yesterday, and I know yesterday they kind of dipped into it a bit, but I wanted the chance. Casey, you were here, but the rest of us didn't get the chance. Were there any launch titles that especially stood out to everyone? The big ones for our audience, at least, peek behind the curtain, statistically speaking, were Hogwarts Legacy, Final Fantasy 16, and of course,
none of those.
Ragnarok.
Final Fantasy isn't a launch title though, and Ragnarok isn't. And
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said launch, and thank you for the correction. But I mean, we saw a slate of next-gen games is what I should have said.
Okay, yeah, sorry.
Woo! Oh, they're burning me alive in the no, that's a good save. We need to correct stuff like that, absolutely. I'm a loose cannon, you know how I do. But I was personally very, very excited for Deathloop. I super love Arcane, and I'm just really interested in everything I've seen from Deathloop. Anything else people wanted to shout out as a special? Like, was there anything that got you to the level that you were ready to click that buy button?
I clicked that
Casey.
buy button because I assume I will be needing a PS5 in the near future to do my job, because I write wikis and strategy guides, and I'd rather be able to do my work. But like, honestly, there are no launch titles that would have made me purchase it otherwise, I think, except for maybe Godfall would be the only one I'm really interested in, but that one is more of a co-op game, and I only have one other person who I usually play games with who's going to get a PS5 at launch. So
see, this is interesting to me. It's like quiet now, which says to me that it's the general hype about being a part of next gen and just getting in on the ground floor rather than any specific games. And that's really interesting to me, because every gamer always says, I don't care, just what are the games? And I do think there were some really strong games shown, but I also think we're at a moment where everyone's just hyped about the console itself, which is a very interesting, special, and rare moment. You know, it only comes around every few years or so.
Yeah, I think the list of games coming, if you have PS Plus and get the PS5 for free, that will just be accessible for you, is great, especially if you never had a PS4. I mean, that's an amazing value.
Yeah, I mean, Spider-Man seemed like it was the PS5 game to have right up until yesterday, when it was like, oh, by the way, it's going to be totally released on PS4 as well.
Same thing with Horizon.
About it. So yeah, as far as actual next-gen exclusive launch titles, I think it's just Demon's Souls and Godfall on PS5, and on Xbox, The Medium is not coming to Xbox One. That is just a Series X. That is a Xbox Series game, next-gen game. So it's actually a shockingly small list across both consoles of games that are next-gen exclusive that you have to have the new box for, which, you may care about that, you may not, but I mean, to your exact point, Swaim, it's like, you don't actually really need a console this fall for either Sony or Microsoft. Like, if you miss out, like, cool, pick one up later when the next-gen games really start flowing. But for now, most everything is pretty much on your existing console.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and both companies now, I mean, even despite messaging in the past where Sony was like, we really want to encourage people to take the leap, and we think next gen should be very different.
We
than
believe
current
in
gen.
generations. Yeah, that
Right.
was a bunch of crap.
I
That
feel
was
like
a whole
they
bunch
they
of-
backtracked a little on that. Yeah, there was recently a quote. I don't want to waste time finding it, but paraphrase, Jim Ryan said something like, the PS4 community is going to remain very important to us for at least 4 years. And that's a bit of a longer runway than I expected given what they were previously saying. So I think, yeah, launch titles have taken on a different role in the console wars than they once had. And we're seeing more of like a gradual transition, a gradual like shift of power from one generation to the next, is my one man's opinion. But to move on and sort of dive deeper into this, I wanted to get to our next story, which is our headline story, which is Microsoft sort of firing back. And I have an interesting starter question. So essentially, Xbox tweeted reassuring people in the wake of the PS5 chaos, pre-order chaos, that the pre-order date will be September 22nd. I want to make sure I'm saying this right. Yeah, the September 22nd pre-order date, 8 a.m. Do we know what time zone? Is that
8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern.
There you go. And the worldwide launch in 36 countries will come on November 10th, and they included a reassurance that they will, quote, let you know the exact time pre-orders start for you soon. So that's my first question. As we alluded to, like NVIDIA recently released a graphics card that got completely nabbed up, largely by bots, is the theory, by bots. So like, are Microsoft and Xbox putting themselves at risk for that now? Now I'm genuinely concerned about which is the better strategy for the consumer.
I think it's you got to give everybody a fair shot. Yes, are there going to be bots involved? But again, I go back to what I said earlier in the show. It's exactly like trying to get concert tickets. Yes, the bots get a bunch of them, but if they were to just go on sale haphazardly, which is what we saw with the PlayStation 5, maybe you get some, maybe you get one, maybe you don't. I think it is more fair, generally speaking. Are your actual odds of getting one lower if the bots are all teed up and ready to go? That remains to be seen. I don't know. Like maybe there's a parallel universe we'll get to poke in and open a wormhole to sometime where the PlayStation 5 pre-orders didn't start until they were supposed to, but otherwise we'll never really know. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see with the Xbox next Tuesday, assuming the plan is stuck to and no retailers jump the gun. It'll be interesting to see how, if people end up happier out of it. Because again, going back to what I said earlier, it's which way is going to upset the fewest number of people, because there's no one way that's going to please everybody for sure.
Well, that's another question at this point in this new culture. Can they even promise that? Can't a retailer just do what Walmart did and let the cat out of the Xbox, so to speak?
They could. It's again Walmart. I could be wrong what I said earlier. I mean, maybe Sony will say, you know what, we're going to slap you on the wrist here. We're going to withhold however many $1 million worth of business from you for the holiday season. And I hope they do that. Let me be clear. I hope that Sony does penalize Walmart for that, because otherwise there's no accountability. So maybe Microsoft has already gone out, and especially after yesterday, they might have been on the phone to all of their major retail partners saying, do not go, or else there will be penalties in the future. But we just don't know. Yeah, I mean, I'd love to be a fly on the wall in like Phil Spencer's office to see how their conversations are going with all their retail partners.
Yeah, David, you were going to say something?
I was going to say, like with me over here with my fear of missing out, and I don't have any pre-orders. I was unsuccessful. I think the good thing about, with the Xbox and the PlayStation and even the 380 graphics card and the 370 that's coming out next month, the 3070, is that, these companies, these aren't like limited edition things. They want to, supply and demand is a real thing, but they want to sell as many of these as possible and make as much money as possible. This isn't like a limited edition, steelbook, case, or a pair of Jordans that they're only going to make a 500. So even if we're maybe missing out now on the pre-orders, I know it's hard to say, like, be patient, but I mean, there will be plenty of these consoles for everybody, even with bots, because they want to sell as many as possible. But again, you're right. Like in this day and age, with production and delays, and I don't know if it's going to be affected by COVID or anything, but it seems like, I feel like Ryan was saying, I feel like we're going to be okay down the road.
Yeah, absolutely. And just in case you somehow still don't know, the Series X will retail at $499, same price as the PS5, and the Series S will get you all the way down to $299. Very savvy move, in my opinion, but that's been discussed at length on this show, and there's no new updates on that beat. So I'm going to move us along to the announcement that the PS5 will be backwards compatible with, quote, 99% of the thousands of PS4 games that have been tested so far. And again, we tipped this a little talking about Jim Ryan wanting to support the next generation, or the current generation while we move forward. And honestly, even though we highlighted that it's a bit of a backtrack from what Sony said previously, I couldn't be more pleased. It's almost like in politics, when a politician you really like who doesn't have a chance pushes I'm not trying to say one doesn't have a chance with that analogy, but pushes the platform in a direction you'd like to see. I feel like Xbox's relentless, aggressive, consumer-friendly attitude, despite Sony messaging on the surface, is forcing them to be a little more consumer-friendly than maybe they might have been in that parallel dimension that Ryan was talking about. I could be the only one with that impression, but is anyone displeased to hear that there's backwards compatibility? You know what I mean? Like, that has to always be music to the gamer's ears, right? Or do you wish that the next gen was so distinct that it wasn't backwards compatible? Is that like a feather in the cap of the next console?
No. I'm all for backwards compatibility, so I can get rid of as many old consoles as I can. Not like I want to get rid of them. I would just like to save space. I mean, I have 2 full boxes of like old consoles and cables just in case I need them. And to be honest, sometimes I do. I mean, I hooked up my Xbox 360 to use as a DDR machine this year because I couldn't go outside or go to the gym. So now I have an Xbox 360. It's just for a DDR machine. But like, it would be really nice if I could just keep getting rid of old consoles and just be able to keep playing all of my old games on my new ones. Like, I really liked the PS3 for that reason, and the Wii was great because you can play GameCube games and it still had the attachments for GameCube controllers. I just really appreciate being able to do that so I can kind of downsize the amount of stuff that I have.
Yeah, Swaim, I think you made a good point that Microsoft absolutely deserves credit for pushing the public expectation of backwards compatibility and thus pushing.
We're back.
Shall we address it? Okay. I'm being instructed to address it. But you know what happened? It's a pandemic. There were technical issues. But we're back. Ryan, you were saying.
Oh, I'm not sure how much of that went through, but the short version was, you're totally right, Swaim. Microsoft does deserve a lot of credit for pushing, not so much Sony, but it was really Microsoft creating the expectation for gamers, doing such a great job of championing multi-generational compatibility, which has helped push Sony in this direction. The PlayStation has done backwards compatibility before. The initial PS3s were PS2, PS1 compatible, but then the PS4 switched from the Cell processor to x86. So it was a pretty distinct difference in the architecture of the hardware. So it is a bummer that the PlayStation 5 backwards compatibility will only include PS4 and not PS3, 2, and 1. It's certainly better than nothing, but yeah, it's still definitely credit to Microsoft, and still definitely the edge to Microsoft as far as supporting all 4 generations of Xbox. That's awesome.
Yeah, and in case you missed it, Jim Ryan also talked at length about the PS Plus collection, which we alluded to earlier, but just in case anyone's unaware, is 18, I believe. Yeah, 18 PS4 first-party titles that you get automatically if you're a PS Plus member. And I think, again, that certainly is taking a page from Microsoft's book in some regard, or could be seen as that.
Definitely.
Yeah, any other thoughts on the great console wars that rend the nation apart before I move on to Nintendo news? Because I know Casey's very eager for Nintendo talk.
Can I ask Ryan, you guys a question, actually? I have a question.
Please.
I'm curious. So, again, sorry for my ignorance. So, when I go on Steam here, I can play a game from 1997, and it doesn't, as long as my computer is able to run it, it'll run. Well, you guys think that PlayStation and Microsoft, in terms of the Xbox anyway, and PS5, will get to a point where they can run like the games from 10, 15 years ago? Like it's not like a big deal, or is it just because the hardware is different than it is on PC? So again, sorry, I'm mostly on PC. That's why I'm a little confused as why they haven't been able to find a system like Steam or something like that can play a game from 20 years ago and it's fine.
No, you're totally right. And Microsoft, that is what they are doing now. They have 100% committed to a PC-like compatibility thing where, I mean, everything on Xbox One is going to run on Series S and X, and that's going to continue moving forward. And there are a good chunk of 360 games that they were able to bring in, and a smaller chunk of original Xbox games. But yeah, now it's going to be very PC-like on the Xbox side moving forward. And I would imagine that Sony will do the same, just starting from a bit later of a point than Microsoft did. But yeah, it's that's all we want. The only hang-ups on PC backwards compatibility are like some old DOS games that you really have to. They either won't run because DOS doesn't exist anymore, or there are like old Windows compatibility issues. But yeah, by and large, PC has always been the model, and it's just great to see consoles finally embrace that as well.
Yeah, I have seen a few commenters, and this is purely anecdotal, but it seems to just be a minority of folks who point to the architecture changing so much that the console is not backwards compatible is at least promising of like more power. You know what I mean? Like, it's so powerful it can't play the old games won't work, dude. Get out of here. But I think the majority opinion is backwards compatibility good, and I certainly share that opinion. Just to do a public service, I wanted to bring up commenter Silent Outbreak 98, who says, I may have missed this somewhere. Do I have to keep a PS4 controller to play these PS4 games on PS5? And I can confirm that the answer is no. The DualSense has the same layout, so you're good to go. All right, Casey, I just had to delay one more second.
No, you're fine.
Tease you, but it's Nintendo time. There was a Nintendo Mini Direct showcase this morning, which I caught, and I know Casey caught. And we're going to talk about sort of the highlights of what was announced at that. It was a partner showcase, so it's specifically not first-party titles. And there was some interesting stuff. Casey, take it away. The show is yours.
Hello. So yesterday, I think we might have mentioned on the show, and I said specifically I would only keep watching if it was Monster Hunter Stories, or Rune Factory 5. And what a surprise that I got all 3 of those things that I wanted that would get me out of bed. So I guess let's start from the top. I think there's a lot of important news, but I think the most important thing we got out of the Nintendo Mini Direct is Monster Hunter Rise, which is a brand new mainline Monster Hunter game coming to the Nintendo Switch. And it seems to be classic Monster Hunter, but it is taking, and by classic I mean all of the Monster Hunter games that came before World, but is taking some new features that were introduced in World, like seamless load screen free maps. They are also you can also ride a companion like in Iceborne's Raider Ride, but that is a whole new thing. There are these new companions called canines. So instead of having felines as your palicos, you got canines called palamutes. How adorable is that? And just like in previous Monster Hunter games, these companions are customizable, and your doggo friend will be an attack companion, and your palico will be a support companion. And you're also seeing something new called a wire bug, which works kind of like the clutch claw that we saw in Iceborne, but with a lot more freedom. Basically, it looks like you can basically throw the bug wherever you want and use it to traverse around the area, but you can also use it to combo into attacks. And this is a new mechanic. It looks really cool. It kind of makes some of the new attacks that you can do look similar to the styles in Generations and Generations Ultimate. Man, I can keep going on like this for half an hour, but I'll stop. But
it's a bit like
anyway.
the Halo Infinite grapple too. Well, you were talking. Go ahead,
Casey.
Ryan.
Yeah, Casey, I just have a quick question. So I am not a Monster Hunter person. I've heard great things about it from you, Brandon Tyrell, but I've never actually sat down and played it. I'm curious. So the thing that surprised me, not knowing anything about Monster Hunter from this partner direct, was that these two Monster Hunters for Switch are both out next year, one spring, one summer. So they're pretty close. Like, what's the main top level difference between the two of them?
Yeah, I can definitely do that. So the other announcement we got from Capcom was Monster Hunter Stories 2. And Monster Hunter Stories is a spin-off game, and the easiest comparison I can make for Monster Hunter Stories is that it is a more kid-friendly turn-based RPG, kind of like Pokemon, where you are making friends with monsters, and they call them monsties, like besties and monsters. I know it's very silly, but it's very endearing when you're playing the original Monster Hunter Stories. But it is a turn-based combat system where you're playing like rock, paper, scissors. But then you're also, when you're in the overworld, you can ride your monsters, you can fly on them, and then you will see other monsters in the overworld, and you have to run into them to trigger the battles. The stories, and this is why it's called Monster Hunter Stories, are usually a lot more in-depth and, I guess, emotional than your generic Monster Hunter games. The normal Monster Hunter games, I mean, World had story, but it wasn't like, the narrative definitely wasn't the drawing point, whereas when you look at stories, there seems to be a lot more to it, and the original stories had an anime adaptation to go along with it as well.
Nice.
Cool. And the regular Monster Hunter is a action RPG. We always have a hard time categorizing Monster Hunter. I think we've categorized it as an
what
RPG
is the
before.
heart of the appeal for people who love the game? Is it about collecting? Is it about just the tactile experience of the combat? Like, what would you say is the big draw that makes Monster Hunter so fun? Because I'm just like Ryan. It's a classic game that's on my list that I know I need to play that I haven't gotten around to yet.
So how do I describe this? So every time you go on a hunt, it's like you're getting a loot box. So that is one kind of draw. It is an interactive loot box every time you go on a hunt. But Monster Hunter is so skill-based. You have to be decent or you're not going to get very far. And they take that even further, in which every single weapon plays differently. So you have to learn every weapon if you want to be good. But that extends the playability, because it's like you're playing almost a different game with every different weapon, so that it just makes it more interesting and less repetitive, even though you are fighting the same monster multiple times in order to get the materials you need to make better armor and better weapons and items and et cetera, to be able to fight bigger and better monsters every single time. And every single time you fight a monster, you get a little bit better, because you can start to read the monster's movements. And it is just so satisfying to begin to understand the way a monster moves and then be able to fight it with skill. And that is wonderful. And also there's fashion hunting. The armor is really cool. You have like funny and cute aspects as well with the palicos. There is a lot of customizability. Each piece of armor that you put on has different skills, and you can this is more of a Monster Hunter World, but it was also in Generations Ultimate, but a much more difficult capacity. I don't know which way Rise is going to take it, but you can do so many different skills, so many different things with the skills, mixing and matching them on your armor to make totally unique sets compared to your fellow hunters. And it's a lot of fun. There's a lot of things to
Sounds
do.
good. Sounds
It's
good. I'll give it a shot.
freaking great.
That is not the only thing they revealed, though. Casey, you asked for it. If it's all right, I'm going to
No,
keep
yeah.
picking on you. They're your highlights.
Go for it.
I have some stuff to say about Hades especially. But
Yeah.
tell us about Disgaea 6. Disgaea? Am I even saying it right?
Disgaea
Disgaea.
is, let's see,
Disgaea.
is my VMix? Am I still here? Disgaea 6 is a basically strategy RPG. Disgaea is a really old game. I guess tactical. Think of it grid-based, like Final Fantasy Tactics or Fire Emblem. But Disgaea is a little bit different because the characters are always really quirky. It's very anime-like. And you can do really crazy things. This is super in-depth RPG. There are, I don't even know, like dozens upon dozens of different characters you can collect and then put on your party and then level up and morph and evolve. And in previous Disgaeas, you can go into, this is going to sound freaking wild, but you can get an item and then you can create a procedurally generated world with that item and go in, and it's a dungeon. You can do crazy things. It's just a wacky tactical RPG that has so much possibility and so much customization, and they're really cool. And we're finally seeing a graphical update with Disgaea 6 that we haven't seen in the series in a really long time. It needed the visual update. Absolutely. This is going to be a Switch exclusive in the US, but it's actually coming to the PS4 as well in Japan. So that's weird, but
yeah, that's anomalous. And that takes us to Hades, which shout out to our producer, Nick Lamone, who this was his first preview for IGN. Congrats to Nick, who gave it a 9, I believe. Yep, that's right. Hades from the folks who brought us Supergiant Games, the folks who brought us Bastion and Transistor, finally games that I've played. You highlighted Hades, Casey. I am very interested in Hades. I love Supergiant. Tell me a bit about why it made your cut.
I honestly just highlighted because I saw that Nick Lamone gave it a 9. I also know Brandon Terrell is really liking this a lot. He said he likes it better than Dead Cells. So I think that's a lot because a lot of people had a lot of high praise for Dead Cells. So it looks great. I think it's getting a lot of praise, and I think it's one of the smaller announcements that might have gone past people's radar that I just wanted to highlight because this looks like a great game.
Yeah, something Nick pulled out in the review is that it sort of creates 2 game modes, game loops, so that when you finish a run and you inevitably die and you're back at your HQ, there's very involved relationship building and almost like dating sim dynamics at the home base. And I think that's really clever. I love any game that can take 2 gameplay loops and balance them against each other, like Minecraft being the ultimate example. I think it always works. When you're sick of mining, you go craft. When you're sick of rogueliting, you do the dating sim half, and then you go back. I'm just very excited. I have high hopes for it. Not to like box out Ryan and David, you guys. Please speak up.
I'm sorry.
Until you get to Ori. I'll be your Ori guy.
Perfect.
Oh, great, because I think we'll end on Ori. Ori's a big deal for me. But Casey, before we get there, you highlighted Balan Wonderworld, which I have very little interest in, so explain.
So, okay, look, honestly, I also don't have that much interest in it, but I thought it kind of came out of left field for me. I was like, what is this? And I guess you put a note, like if Square Enix made Mario Odyssey, and I guess it's an adventure platformer game. It was created by Yuji Naka, who is the creator of Sonic the Hedgehog, which I think is interesting. But it looks like you get a bunch of different costumes and you have different abilities, and there's a co-op mode. So it might be a fun little platformer, but man, it looks pretty weird.
Yeah, it looks interesting. By the end of the presentation, all I could see was like, oh, it's like Mario Odyssey, but just different things, but the fact that you can become any character and it gives you all the different powers.
It's interesting.
But we'll see. I could be wrong. Just my first blush impression. Rune Factory 5. Tell us about Rune Factory.
All right. So on one hand, this was supposed to come out in 2020, so I am slightly disappointed, but you know what? That's fine. It'll just make my 2021 even better. And I need a much better year than 2020 because 2020 has not been going great. But Rune Factory 5 obviously it's the 5th installment of the series, but think Harvest Moon combined with monster taming and raising and dungeon crawling, and then you have Rune Factory. And it is also something, there's also relationship building, and the RPG elements are pretty crazy. Literally everything you do levels up. Like every time you swing a hoe, you'll incrementally like level up that ability every time you water a plant, every time you go fishing, every time you swing a sword, and there's different weapons and different magic. And there's a lot of things. And for example, in Rune Factory 4, you could actually befriend the bosses of the dungeons and you could go back and fight them, but you had to farm very specific things to get them. For example, one of the bosses required you to create a giant carrot and feed it to it for a chance to befriend it. And that is a multiple season endeavor. So I don't know. This is a cool game. I love Rune Factory. I'm extremely excited for Rune Factory 5.
Nice, yeah, and I'm just honestly very pleased to see Nintendo, with over the lifetime of the Switch, have such strong third-party and partner support. It seems like something that Nintendo needs, and it bodes well for the future, in my opinion. All right, we've made it to one of certainly my highlights. I just played this game in essentially 2 sittings, like over a weekend, and it blew me away. But I'm gonna let Ryan steal the thunder. Ori and the Will of the Wisps. Ryan, why is that a highlight for you?
Well, we definitely want to hear from you on this, but Ori and the Will of the Wisps is it came out in March, I believe, for Xbox One and PC, and it'll be available, and you can play it in 4K 60 on the One X, and at launch here in November on the Series X, you could play it in 4K 120 frames per second, which would be pretty cool. But it's now, boom, surprise, it's on Switch now, which is fantastic news. Yeah, this game, it is one of the best Metroidvania games of this generation. I think it's very fair to say that. Ori and the Blind Forest is one of my favorite Xbox games, which that also came to Switch later. But this, I think Will of the Wisps is arguably it's a slightly better game. I mean, maybe you like the story of the first one better potentially, but the mechanics have evolved and been refined and iterated on for Will of the Wisps, and it is a tremendous game that you can play it in a number of different styles. You can sort of reallocate your skill points and abilities to change the way you play, so you're not just sort of stuck playing the whole game in a single fashion. So yes, Wayne, I definitely want to hear why you love it, because it's also just one of the most visually stunning video games artistically in quite some time.
Oh yeah, it's just gorgeous. It feels like playing not a Pixar movie, but a short that comes before a Pixar movie, because the style is so unique and specific. But it has that sort of we don't need dialogue vibe. I found Ori and the Blind Forest mechanically slightly too floaty and the platforming too meticulous, and I ended up not finishing that game.
Water Tower.
To me, that's it. You got it. It broke
Water
me.
Tower. Once you get past that, you're fine. But that is definitely the pain point of Blind Forest for sure.
I'll probably revisit it in order to just be a completionist. But this game, the mechanics immediately were so tight and perfected, and like you said, it's sort of Monster Hunter-esque. Changing the weapon completely changes your traversal and combat style. Everything about it is, I don't say this lightly, but I would consider Ori and Will of the Wisp a perfect game. And I don't mean the best game, because that comes down to so many factors and matters of taste and what does it even mean. But I just mean I cannot find a flaw in it. And there's something unique about these 2D animated games. I say this a lot about Rayman Origins and Legends. It's a simpler number of elements because it's condensed into a plane. But because of that, you can create games where you're like, I could not improve that game. There is nothing I would change. Nothing I would change. So if I could get anything across on this stream today, it would be, give Ori and the Will of the Wisps a shot. Great game.
I'd have to agree. It was actually, I think it was Ryan who was praising it, and that's what got me to play it. And I think I enjoyed it so much that I think I got it on the Xbox One first, I believe, and then when it was on PC, I bought it again. And then, of course, when Will of the Wisps came out, I bought that too. So I mean, this is one of those things that for the Switch, I would definitely love to play. It's great to have it in mobile form and just take it with me because it's just such a memorable experience. I just can't think of any other game because I haven't played a lot of those Metroidvania games, so I can't personally think of a game that I've ever played that's like this game and has that type of animation or graphics and style. I absolutely love it.
Casey, have you played Ori?
I haven't. I'm
All
not.
right, now's your
Yeah.
chance.
Yeah, I should. I mean, I'm to be totally honest, I'm not a big side-scrolling platforming type of gamer. I prefer, I guess, the 3D space, which is weird because I mean, like most people, I started with 2D games like Super Mario World and Sonic and such. But yeah, I guess they never really stuck with me. The first game I played that made me keep playing games as passionately as I do is Ocarina of Time, and that was in a 3D space. So I just kind of like stuck with that.
Very notably in a 3D space. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. All right, well, we end the broadcast today on a sad note in memoriam of the 3DS, which has officially ceased production after 10 years and more than 75 million units sold. I never got in on the 3DS, but I would like to cede the floor to any 3DS memories or nods of respect or anything like that. I know it mattered to a lot of people on staff that that it's discontinued. Anyone a big 3DS, passionate about the 3DS?
I loved my 3DS. I played Monster Hunter on it.
There you
But
go.
I also played a lot of Pokemon on it, but you didn't necessarily, I guess you did, but the 3DS is great also because it was backwards compatible with DS games as well. So the library for the 3DS is honestly gigantic. There are so many great games playable on the 3DS, and I think that makes it a really fantastic console by itself. Just the library alone is just insane. I mean, you have some games that have been ported, but not necessarily well. Like, for example, The World Ends With You is great on the 3DS, fine on the phone or the Switch. It kind of gets rid of the mechanic that made it such a unique and great game on the 3DS. But there are a lot of games that are stuck on that handheld, and I think it's a worthy legacy console to hold on to just for that great library of games.
And now there's a limited number of them, so hopefully we can spark another day of bots and scammers.
Only
rushing to
75
eBay.
million of them.
There's only 75 million. They're wearing out as we speak. All right. Well, that's all we've got for today. But I did want to point out that there is no Up at Noon today because Brian Altano is on vacation. So you're off the hook. You can shuffle out. But thank you so much for being here. We got to hit all of the consoles today, which really pleases me. We don't usually do like the full gamut. That was a lot of fun. Casey, you slayed. Thanks for carrying the Nintendo portion of this stream. And thanks so much to David and Ryan for joining me, of course. Thanks to you for watching, and we will see you tomorrow, same place, same time, for another News, Games, and More. So long.